Hello, welcome back to Sevilla Storytime. The British presence in Andalusia has not always just been about tourism. In fact, the Brits have played a very influential and fundamental role in bringing Andalusia into the modern world. How much do you know about the British in Andalusia? Let's dig in. Rule Britannia, Britannia rule the waves. My grandmother would be rolling in her grave. It's September, which means back to school. And it just got me thinking a little bit about the fact that, when I was at school, we didn't actually learn a lot about Spain. I don't get taught about a lot of things in the education system in the UK these days. When I was at university, I studied history, and we did learn about the Catholic kings. We learned about the Spanish Inquisition. Funnily enough, we didn't learn about La Leyenda Negra, the black legend of the Spanish Inquisition. We actually learned about how we were worse. I've been mulling over all of the things that I have learned over the last 8 years as I've lived here, and how there's just so much that we just don't get taught. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice as we get back to school if I could impart some of the nuggets of wisdom? If I think it's interesting, then maybe someone else out there will think it's interesting. Without further ado, let's get back to school. Side note, yes, I have dyed my hair. I just fancied a change, so, there you go. I'm a free woman, can do what I want. Being blonde in Sevilla has some challenges because people just automatically think that I'm a tourist. With the current situation as it is right now, with people being kind of pissed off at tourists, 99% of people are lovely here in Sevilla, but you do get the odd one who is really anti-tourist. I managed to kind of fly under the radar for a long time with my black hair. A lot of people just assumed that I was Sevillana from Sevilla until I opened my mouth. That's gone out the window now that I've got my blonde hair back, so we'll see. People are going to start speaking English to me again, which is really annoying. I never speak English, I only ever speak Spanish, so it just annoys me. And other people like me, it annoys us when people speak English to us because we want to integrate, we want to immerse, we want to be just another person, another Sevillano. So, where was I? I do get distracted. The British impact on Andalusian culture. Okay, so this is not me getting the Union Jack flag out and saying, oh, we're the best country and we've conquered Andalusia. I'm actually just telling you things as they were. I'm telling you facts. There's been a strong British influence in the south of Spain in the last 200 years, which is absolutely undeniable. It all started around the year 1873 when a British investment group bought the Rio Tinto copper mines. It sounds weird saying it like that, Rio Tinto. The Rio Tinto copper mines in Huelva basically went into mine mineral deposits. And that actually went on to become the largest mining company in the world. It completely transformed the province of Huelva. Mining activity had already been taking place there for centuries, like literally since forever. But it was the British who coming in and using the new methods of the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century that really, really transformed how the mining took place. British brought other things with them and started to have an influence on the culture around them. So the miners in Rio Tinto lived in an area called Barrio Reina Victoria. Okay, so the neighbourhood of Queen Victoria, makes sense. And I guess you could say it was a mini version of suburban England. You can actually go and visit the houses that people used to live in. They've preserved some of the houses around there. One of my friends went to the village recently and showed me pictures, and I had no idea. You see, I've been here for ages. I've been here for years, and I still keep learning things. And she was showing me the pictures, and it just looked like a quaint English village. It's so bizarre, and it's just there in the middle of Andalusia in Huelva. All the houses in the area are like Tudor semis. They've got they're semi-detached houses with lawns and rose bushes. You know, these lovely quaint gardens. If you saw pictures of it, you would never guess that what you were actually looking at is an Andalusian town. Doesn't it just yeah. Rule Britannia. I guess it's like a little bit like when you go to Gibraltar, and you just cross a line and then suddenly it's like, bam, you're in the United Kingdom. I don't know what I'm talking about. But it was British settlers that had gone there and they were contributing to the economy. They were building up industry and they brought their own customs with them. So one of the outstanding things that was brought into Andalusian culture was football. So the British people came over and brought football with them. I mean, now when you think of Spain and Spanish football, I mean, Spain have one of the best football teams in the world. I mean, they bloody thrash us all the time. And in a way, it's kind of strange to think about Spain with not having a football culture, but that's how it was until the Brits came in and introduced football, and principally in Huelva. These were the men who were living and working in Huelva in the mines, and they started the Recreativo de Huelva in 1889, which became the first Spanish football club in history, started by British people. The players were initially British and they played on the fields of the gas company, which was owned by the Scottish businessmen. Alexander Mackay and Robert Russell Ross founded the Huelva Recreation Club in 1889 for workers at Rio Tinto. So it's just like your standard working men's football team. This was happening all over the UK, like every Sunday, like guys, and it still happens now. Like the guys get together and play football and, you know, we'll have a few pints down the pub afterwards. Why can't I do an English accent when I'm English? What? The first official football match in Spain was played in 1890 under the rules of the English FA between Huelva Recreation Club and the Sevilla Football Club. Sevilla Football Club. Oi! Yes, I'm Sevillista, in case you're wondering. Hasta la muerte. So the mines existed from the 19th century until 1954. In 1954, the mines were sold to the Spanish government, and so the whole thing just packed up. But that British influence still remains. There are other British customs that were introduced into the area, such as tennis. So it wasn't just football, tennis was introduced. And also tea time. So I don't know, it's funny for me to think about it because for me, tea time doesn't really exist, I guess. I'm from a working class Irish descent family, so every hour is time for tea. We don't just have like a set tea time. I guess the British people that did go over in the 19th century brought with them the concept of having tea at 5 o'clock. It's bizarre. Imagine that. Imagine people having a 5 o'clock tea time in Huelva. So some notable buildings that you can still go and visit in Rio Tinto are the town hall. You can go and see the tourist office, and you can see the Museum of the English, La Casa Museo de los Ingleses. So it's a museum that's all about the English presence within the area. There's also a grand theatre, there's a Victorian railway station. One of the most impressive things that the British did in Huelva anyway was to build the Tinto Quay, which is over 1,200 metres long. Is a huge metallic structure. It was built between 1874 and 1876, and it was used to load cargo onto the ships, the British ships. So they would come to this region, they would mine the minerals, and they would load their cargo onto the ships and then ship out whatever it was to everywhere around the world. This was the time of the British Empire, so Britain was super international, at least in its trade. So when you go there now, you won't see cargo being loaded onto ships, but what you will see is the structure itself. So it's actually one of the main attractions when you go to Huelva, and it's a really nice place to watch the sunset, just saying. British people obviously really enjoyed the more temperate climate, or maybe I shouldn't say temperate, maybe I should say just roasting hot climate of Andalusia, and they would actually go to Punta Umbria, where there are some beautiful beaches, just to enjoy the sand and the sea, and to get away from the heat, basically. So that kind of, I guess, was kind of the incipient tourism, or the popularity of kind of an incipient kind of inclination to get away to the Spanish seaside when the going gets really hot. But it's not just Rio Tinto that felt the British influence. It was kind of the whole region of Andalusia had British people coming in and making their mark, because it was a time of industry. It was the Industrial Revolution. People were coming over, bringing with them the new technologies, the new methods of doing things, of speeding up industrial processes like mining. If you actually look into it, the gasworks companies that started in the 19th century here in Andalusia were actually started by British people. And they even celebrated the Queen's birthday, Queen Victoria. They celebrated the Queen's birthday in Huelva. Imagine that. Bizarre. Another thing that the Brits brought to Spain was golf. I don't know about you, but personally, I don't find golf that exciting. But I know that someone out there, some of you will be huge fans of golf. So there you go. So be proud of that. So golf was actually brought to Malaga first. It was brought by Princess Beatriz, or Beatrice. I should try and say it in the English way. I'm talking about British people here. Princess Beatrice, who was the daughter of Queen Victoria. So she used to go to Malaga in the winter to get away from the cold, and she brought golf with her. Now when you come to Spain, wherever there's a tourist resort, there's usually some sort of a golf course somewhere nearby if it's by the coast. So you can thank Queen Victoria's daughter for that. And of course, one of the imports that the British brought with them was religion. So obviously the official religion of the United Kingdom is Anglicanism, the Church of England, and Spain is a Catholic country. So the Brits brought with them their Protestant religion, and so they needed to have their own cemeteries. So they have the English cemeteries or the British cemeteries. So there's one here in Sevilla, there's one in Malaga, which is quite famous. And there are various. Wherever there were British people, there were British cemeteries, obviously. The first Anglican cemetery in Spain was placed in Malaga in 1831. So they are Anglicans, so they needed to have their own burial ground. They didn't want to be buried within Catholic cemeteries, or I don't know if it was that they didn't want to be buried there, or whether the Catholics didn't want them to be buried there, or whether it was a combination of the two, whatever, you know. So when you go to these Anglican cemeteries, it's quite interesting because you can see some quite important people that are buried there, because they're the people who came over and brought the Industrial Revolution to Spain. The people who built the first modern railways here, the people that started the gasworks, the people that industrialised the mining companies, the people that started football clubs. So if you come to Sevilla and you go to the English cemetery, I do talk about this in one of my other videos. When you go into the English cemetery, you'll see that one of the tombs is actually one of the founders of what is now Sevilla Football Club. And it was a British gentleman. I think he was actually a Scottish man. So I think a lot of the people who are buried within the English cemetery are actually Scottish, so don't say that to Scottish people. There's even World War II heroes that are buried within these cemeteries. Here in Sevilla, we have a World War II war hero, a British World War II war hero who was a spy, very much like a James Bond kind of figure, and he is buried here. So it's not a one-way street, obviously, when you have these communities of expatriates coming in and setting up camp. There's obviously a mix or cultural interchange going on. So the British were bringing their stuff, you know, golf, tennis, football, tea time. But they were also learning from the Spanish about some wonderful things like Spanish cuisine. So So learning about, tapas. I mean, who could live without tapas? The British also started to really treasure marmalade made with Seville oranges. Seville is very famous for its orange trees, but when you're walking along the street in Sevilla, if you come to visit, you shouldn't just pick an orange off the tree and eat it because they're very bitter. They're not good to eat straight off the tree, but they are fantastic for secondary uses. For example, making marmalade. In fact, the royal household to this day still uses Sevilla oranges in their marmalade. So King Charles III, when his added breakfast time, is there munching away on his marmalade. If you remember that piece that Queen Elizabeth II did with Paddington Bear, where she has a marmalade sandwich in her bag, it's like iconic. Oh, may she rest in peace. I miss that woman. That marmalade sandwich that she's got in her bag, you can bet your bottom dollar that the marmalade was made with Seville oranges. Seville oranges are the ish. But also Sevilla oranges are great for, they're used for perfumes. They also use as flavouring for gin as well. So if you get those kind of orange blossom gin, you know what I'm talking about. They're made with Seville oranges. Also, sherry wine. So sherry comes from Jerez. In fact, the word sherry actually means Jerez. It's just that the British people couldn't say Jerez, so they said sherry. And so that's where we get our lovely sweet wine sherry from. It's from Jerez. Actually, some of the most important sherry cellars were founded by British people that had settled in the area. One of them is called Harvey's Sherries, and it is the only Spanish brand that has been awarded the Royal Warrant. That's the seal of quality, the seal of excellence given by the British royal family to say, oh my God, this is excellent. One must drink more of this liquid gold here. So that's, even though sherry does come from Jerez, it was the British that really played a fundamental role in kind of exporting it and making it famous throughout the modern world. So it's a fortified sweet wine. It's very synonymous with Andalusia, and I think everyone knows what sherry is. In fact, I think the first alcohol that I ever tasted in my life was possibly sherry because my grandma had a bottle of sherry in her kitchen cupboard, and I think I was about 12 and I just I was sneaking a little bit of it because I was curious. I wanted to know what alcohol tasted like, and my God, my first taste of alcohol was sweet Andalusian wine. I mean, it's just the circle of life. I digress. Waffling. Every day I'm waffling. In Almeria, the impact of the British mining legacy is still present. You can go to the Cable Inglés, which is the English pier. So it's a loading bay that existed in the 19th century and is now just a lovely pier. So you've got all these piers springing up around, and now it's a pedestrian walkway and a viewpoint overlooking the Bay of Almeria. How nice. So actually, one of the things that did end up happening as a result of the British presence within Andalusia was that people back home in the UK became more aware of the existence of this place, which had once been so famous, but had now kind of fallen into decline over the years. People like Lord Byron, that his imagination was piqued by this idea of this kind of romantic land where the sun never fails to shine, and actually they wanted to investigate more and write about the place and promote it. It was around the same time that Washington Irving, who appears in one of my previous videos, began to promote Andalusia and explore Andalusia and write about it and defend some of its monuments like the Alhambra. So that's part of the reason why this started to happen. It was because the Brits were in Andalusia and bringing the Industrial Revolution to these shores. It's quite fascinating when you think about the kind of complicated relationship that Spain and Britain have had over the centuries. I'm not going to bore you with all the details in one video because it's just too much. So I'm half Irish and half Scottish, and Scottish by birth. People are kind of, delighted by that. But when I say that I was brought up in Manchester, there's just kind of no reaction. At first I thought, well, what's that all about? You know, it's not very fair, is it? Because, you know, England is a great country too. But that's because of historical ties. It's all to do with historical ties, as usual. I mean, in England's defence, they did bring some great, modernising industrial methods here and brought Spain, or at least the south of Spain, into the 19th century and the 20th century. So, come on lads. No, don't be like that. I know you guys want to have Gibraltar back, but even people in Gibraltar don't want to go back. So what can we do? People ask me about Gibraltar. Like, honestly, I don't know one British person that gives two hoots about Gibraltar. I feel like people from Gibraltar care about it more than we do. Obviously, I live here. I'm very much invested in what happens in Spain, in Spanish culture, and if Spain wants Gibraltar back, I'd be like, well, there you go, have it. It's just, to me, it doesn't really make that much sense for the British to have it. Anyway, that's a whole nother video. I digress. Brits and the Spanish and their centuries-long ties. I feel like we can always learn from each other. Historical differences are historical differences as far as I'm concerned. We're in such an age of globalization that I feel like in many ways it doesn't really make sense to hold grudges about things that happened literally 500 years ago, but that's just my 2 cents. So that's one thing that maybe you might not know: the great influence of the Brits upon Spanish culture in the 19th century. Until I lived here, I never realised just how influential the British have been in impulsing Spain, pushing Spain into the modern world. I was quite surprised, to be honest. So if you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe, leave me a comment. Yeah, I'm off to have my 5 o'clock cup of tea and eat some scones and put up the Union Jack flag. Oh, spiffing, golly gosh. God save the king! See you for the next video. Hasta luego, ciao, bye bye. Bam bam badam bam badam bam 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 badam bam badam bam.